What a beautiful day in this kingdom of classic gaming, where enemies only can attack me one at a time and be slain by the mighty warrior, Corn. Oh look! A slime! You're of no bother to me. In fact, it's a bit boring. I mean, one enemy at a time, I need more of a challenge than that. Maybe a modern game like Dragon Quest Heroes can provide more of a challenge. Oh. Just another slime. He brought a friend. And a friend. And a few more friends. Okay! Now this, a hero knows when to run. Now maybe a chance to run. I'm out of here.
Dragon Quest Heroes is the newest game released in the Dragon Quest series, the long-running RPG series which will be always much more popular in its native Japan than here in North America, though us North American fans usually hold Dragon Quest pretty near and dear to our hearts. But it's been a little bit since we've seen a Dragon Quest game released here. The last one in North America for a major console of any kind was Dragon Quest Monsters Joker 2 for the Nintendo DS, and that was back in 2011. So even though this isn't a true Dragon Quest game in its most basic sense, it's still great to be able to finally play a Dragon Quest game here in North America. Dragon Quest Heroes, the World Tree's Woe and the Blight Below, which is one of the most unnecessary and bloated titles in recent memory, is a spin-off combination of Dragon Quest and Dynasty Warriors. In fact, Square and Koei Tecmo worked together to create this game, and no longer can you look at these games and kind of say they're just hack-and-slash games. In fact, there's so many of these Dynasty Warrior-style games that they've kind of become their own genre, with Fist of the North Star, One Piece, Gundam, Legend of Zelda, and now Dragon Quest. As soon as you begin Dragon Quest Heroes, if you're familiar with Dynasty Warriors, you'll get the combat right away. Those new, it's a very simple combat system. You have square and triangle representing weak and strong attacks, and you can either mash just one or mash just the other one, or mix them up in order to perform different combos on different enemies. You also have a magic meter in Dragon Quest Heroes that's a little bit different than some of the other Dynasty Warrior style games, where you can hold in the trigger button in order to press square, triangle, or later on circle to unleash different magic attacks against enemies, or you can actually sometimes do straight up combos, and the combo will be ended with one of those same magic attacks. So there's not a whole lot of complexity, but there is a variety to just mashing square or just mashing triangle. But other than the very simple combos that you start to kind of learn very early on, it doesn't get any more in-depth really than that. You're going to be taking that combat system and going into battle against tons and tons of Dragon Quest related monsters. Monsters from all over the Dragon Quest universe are represented here, and the thing the game does the best, above all else, is representing the monsters. Longtime fans of Dragon Quest like myself will probably be blown away with just getting to see the Akira Toriyama artwork come to life with these massive creatures, even the little tiny slimes, of course, compared all the way up to the giant ogres, trolls, and dragons that you're going to have to be battling on the various maps. The maps themselves usually consist of one of a few different goals. You'll have to either wipe out all your enemies that you're battling, or you may have to protect a home base of some kind. It may be a gate, it may be a tree root, it may be a person, and then sometimes you also have to escort people all the way through different areas, and sometimes there are a lot of winding paths you'll have to take. But outside of that, there really isn't too much change. You're not going to be doing anything really far outside of those initial boundaries. Not too long in the combat, you're going to notice the tension meter. The tension meter you can look at kind of like the Mushu meter in a lot of the Dynasty Warriors games. This slowly builds up from you doing combos, sometimes taking damage, and once it fills up, you can go into kind of your high tension mode, almost like a Super Saiyan mode. In fact, even your main character gets spiky hair once you go into that high tension mode, and you have a period of time that you can just unleash massive amounts of attacks against enemies, as well as you having things like increased speed during that time. However, at any point, you can end it or wait for it to drop on down, and then you're going to unleash your coup de grace attack, which will be able to massively wipe out a huge amount of enemies in your path. the two main characters of the game kind of have basically the same coup de grace, but all the other characters that you get throughout the game unleash different styles of coup de grace attacks, so they're really cool to see, especially your first time, and because of the way they work, they can come into play at different times. At any point during combat, you can switch characters. You don't have to play as the main character you chose from at the beginning of the game. You can switch to any of your party members, and you have a party of 4 different characters, so there's a large variety of being able to switch between the different characters who use different weapon types, have different style attacks, different spells, and other different attributes that make them better for certain situations. When you're not controlling those characters, they will be controlled by the AI, which is one of those mixed bags. It's not too overly bad, but at the same time really not all that helpful. But when you think about it, if you try to make them too helpful, the game would end up being even easier than sometimes it ends up being. Especially early on, the game can be deceptively easy during the first few missions of the game. Dragon Quest Heroes takes place in its own original kingdom. There's the 2 main protagonists I mentioned earlier, as well as a few other created characters just for the game, and then you also have characters from previous Dragon Quests coming in through like dimensional portals. Characters from Dragon Quest 4, 5, 7, and 8 are represented here, including some of my favorites like Bianca from Dragon Quest 5, Terry from 7, and Yangus from Dragon Quest 8. And each of the characters that comes in does bring their own unique weapon type, unique moves, and other things that make them fun to experiment and play along with. And you can put them in your party at any time and have any mix of the characters you want in your party. It can actually be difficult to pick which 4 characters that you want to join you along your quest. Unfortunately, the storyline of Dragon Quest Heroes is one of the weaker points of the game. It's your typical kind of good versus evil storyline. The kingdom's at peace, monsters and humans are living in harmony, and then all of a sudden the monsters turn evil, and you have to figure out why that's going on. And even throughout the story, as you're introduced to the more characters, especially even the characters from the other Dragon Quest worlds, nothing gets really off the rails shocking or amazing, or really you're gonna feel hours and hours after the game is done. You're pretty much, the story is a means to an end of just getting into more gameplay against massive amounts of creatures. Being a Dragon Quest game, there is some RPG elements, mostly in the leveling up system. You'll gain experience throughout battles and level up your characters, gaining skill points, and then you can allocate the skill points any way that you want to. And you not only do that for your main character, but all the characters in your party, so you can build them any way that you would like. The problem is, there really isn't a whole lot of variety to each of the characters' skill trees. How it's set up is you have your spells, which every character has a square, a triangle spell, and then their circle spell is their more powerful one that can be upgraded 3 times. But there's no way to kind of branch it off or choose different spells. Characters are built the way they're built, and there's really no way of changing, like let's say you want a character to get a fire spell instead of an ice spell or something like that. That's unable to be done. You'll then have the attribute section that everybody has, and this upgrades 5 different sections for like 5 health upgrades, 5 attack upgrades, defense upgrades, wisdom, aka your magic point upgrades. You have an exclusive section, which each character in the lower left, that's like Jessica exclusive area or Bianca exclusive area. And these are varied depending upon what character, of course, because they're exclusive to them. So they're going to be upgrading a lot of their skills and combos, as well as some characters will get extra attack or skill boost in there, then another character may get like a health or a wisdom boost. So that does change up some characters, making them more attack-oriented or more defense-oriented. And then you have the special effects section, which you can upgrade stuff like, does your character do more damage when they're in low health, or do they get more defense when they're low in health? And after leveling up the characters enough, you can eventually afford to buy everything in the skill tree, so you don't have to worry about, oh, if I choose this health upgrade, I won't be able to get this defense upgrade. That's not anything to worry about while leveling up your characters, so it's kept pretty basic. The world of Dragon Quest Heroes is a pretty large map with lots of different areas to explore. You'll get access to an airship pretty early on, and from there you'll be able to select the next storyline area to go to. Like, let's say, a desert area where you'll complete 4 or 5 missions, at the end of which it'll culminate with usually a boss battle, not always, but usually a boss fight, and then you'll get a bit of story and move on to the next area, which may be a forest area or a cave area. You have to complete the areas in a certain order for the story to progress. It's not like a big open world map that you get to explore. It's all done through a map screen, and you just kind of move the ship where you want to go. Along with the main story areas, there are some other areas that will pop up that will usually allow you to either do some side quest content, DLC content, or replaying boss fights from earlier on in the game for some extra practice or extra items. Besides that, you also have the quests that you can do. Inside of your hub ship, there's a variety of different people to talk to. One happens to be the quest giver, which will give you quests based on stuff like defeating a certain amount of an enemy or collecting a certain amount of an item, and you'll get rewards for doing so. There's quite a lot of quests to complete, so it'll probably take you a good amount of time in order to do all of them. Combine that with the main campaign, which is going to take you easily 20 to 30 hours in order to make your way through it. There's a lot of stuff to do in Dragon Quest Heroes to at least keep you occupied. There's also the weapon and armor shop, or in this case, the orb shop. You have to buy not only weapons and equipment to have better attack, you can buy shields, which will do deflecting better in battle, but really won't help out your defense. It's actually orbs that will increase your defense, so sometimes you'll find yourself losing a battle by just this much, but getting a new weapon or orb that just unlocked to be able to be purchased at the store is what you need in order to claim that victory. There's also mini medals and an alchemy shop, with an alchemy shop being, of course, that you can combine different variety of items that you find, like dragon's teeth or ore or whatever, and create trinkets that will greatly affect your overall gameplay. Like they could increase certain stats or certain types of attacks against certain kind of creatures. So that all comes into play, and it's fun to find all the different elements that you need in order to make these recipes. The mini medals are basically an elite shop. If you're unfamiliar with mini medals, which they are, and of course a staple of the Dragon Quest universe, these are elite special items that you get, usually finding them throughout a level in special hidden chests. You can also earn them for getting trophies in the game. It's one of the few games I've seen that as you unlock trophies for completing different tasks, like defeating a boss or doing a certain amount of combo, you'll also be able to unlock a mini medal in the game, and then you can spend your mini medals on some very elite set of items or very rare ingredients to mix in your alchemy pot. At its core, Dragon Quest Heroes is a Dynasty Warriors style game, so fans of turn-based JRPGs, traditional Dragon Quest games, or fans that prefer a more in-depth battle system, more akin to something like Demon or Dark Souls, you're going to be a bit disappointed. If you can get into the hack and slash, mashing square, mashing triangle while battling a horde of monsters over and over and over again, and find that enjoyable, you're going to love Dragon Quest Heroes. That's not to say that Dragon Quest Heroes doesn't have any difficulty. No, in fact, the difficulty definitely revs up, and strategy definitely revs up the farther you get in. On a battle map, you'll have vortexes led by these Maul Keepers, basically an advanced enemy. They have like a glowing aura around them, and if you defeat them, it'll destroy the vortex that they're protecting. The vortexes spew out monster after monster after monster, but if you can destroy the Maul Keeper, the vortex goes away, and no more monsters comes out of it. However, after a certain amount of time, the monsters will stop coming out as a whole, so you can either wait for a vortex to spew everyone out to the battlefield that you're going to have to deal with, or take out a Maul Keeper early on. But at the same time, you'll have to protect your base. And if you're in the center of a map and there's 4 vortexes open, which one do you go after first? Where do you stand? Do you stand still, or do you try to go after one of these Maul Keepers? Also, you'll get monsters to help you out in the form of monster coins. You have 2 different styles of monster coins. You have the sentry style ones and the support ones. With the support ones unleashing on the map for just a period of time that'll either refill your magic or health, or maybe do a special attack to a bunch of enemies. But more importantly, the sentry ones will actually go onto the map, be friendly, and fight off anything that gets in its way. So what's really cool is you may be able to get one for an ogre or a golem and set the golem up at your home base and have the golem kind of protect your base while you go to quickly run off and destroy a vortex and then come back to see how the golem's doing. Unfortunately, you can only have a few of these on the battlefield at a time. You'll notice in the lower left corner these are represented, and each monster takes up a certain amount of space. So of course, a golem or troll are going to take up a lot more space than something maybe like a slime. So you have to decide which monsters you want on the field. Also, you can't control them, you can't become them, and you can't tell them where to go. So they are extremely useful, but you have to make sure you place them in the place you want them to be, because they won't move on their own except to protect the very small circle around them. So you could unleash a couple of really big monsters to protect a base while you go deal with everything else. And that degree of strategy makes some of the later missions definitely more fun and enjoyable from a strategic standpoint than a lot of the earlier just kind of destroy everything on the field battles. The boss encounters in Dragon Quest Heroes is one of the best aspects, and one of the things that gets better than a lot of the other Dynasty Warrior style games. Whether you're battling other Dragon Quest universe monsters like dragons or titans, or battling some of the original creations just for Dragon Quest Heroes involving like the main villain of the game, Dragon Quest Heroes boss encounters are easily one of the highlights of the main story quest. One of the most impressive things though about Dragon Quest Heroes is the amount of creatures and different effects on screen without the game slowing down one bit. I didn't find the game slowing down at all. Combine that with the game didn't crash or I run into any major glitches of any kind during the course of my gameplay, Dragon Quest Heroes is a solidly made game. From an artistic standpoint of seeing these monsters on a big screen and this beautiful 3D graphics that are extremely colorful and pop out of the screen is just a blast, especially just filling you with nostalgia for longtime Dragon Quest fans. And then the music is nostalgia as well. There's not a whole lot of original tracks as far as the music goes. The music is almost all, and I don't want to say all because I'm sure there's some original music here, but it's mostly composed of songs from previous Dragon Quest games, so there's a lot of nostalgia for longtime fans of the Dragon Quest series included in Dragon Quest Heroes. Along with the music, the voice acting in the game is handled in English and Japanese, which actually surprised me that they actually casted a full-blown English voice cast. The only issue is the game relies too heavily on European accents, similar to what we ended up seeing in the Dragon Quest DS remakes of games, where a lot of the different characters and areas that you explored had accents added to their just text dialogue. That's included in the spoken dialogue of the characters this time around, so there's going to be a lot of people here that aren't going to like the English voice actors, and the farther I got into the game, I found it hit or miss. Some characters I really liked their English voices, and other ones really kind of just were like cringe-worthy. The good news is you can just turn on to the Japanese voice acting and leave that on. Also, with the audio, sometimes it comes out of the controller. A lot of the smaller voice samples come out of the controller instead of the TV, which I'm never a big fan of. Some people would prefer it to have one way or the other, but unfortunately you can't choose which way you prefer, which is a little bit disappointing. But even if your controller was on mute, you'd still see the text on the actual TV screen, so you're not missing anything with having it through the controller. In conclusion, Dragon Quest Heroes fills me to the brim with nostalgia and love for the series. I'm a longtime North American Dragon Quest fan, and it's been really rough for us. I know it's even rougher for European Dragon Quest fans. I buy every Dragon Quest game that is released, whether I have to sometimes import them, and I definitely buy all the North American released games. In fact, I want to give this game a 10 out of 10 and tell everyone to go buy the game. Go buy tons of copies. Buy 3, 4, 5 copies. Buy them for everyone you know. You don't have a PS4 still, go out and buy the game. Just so maybe Square could be convinced to release these other Dragon Quest games here in North America, like the upcoming, well, I'm not excited for it, still Dragon Quest Minecraft style Dragon Quest game, the Theatrhythm Dragon Quest game, Dragon Quest X, the MMO that we never saw. Hopefully we're going to see Dragon Quest XI when it's fully released, or maybe even the remakes of Dragon Quest 7 and 8 for the 3DS will finally come to the US. However, since it only appeals to a small demographic of gamers, longtime Dragon Quest fans, fans of Dynasty Warriors, and being such a flooded genre now with One Piece Pirate Warriors 3 came out not that long ago, Hyrule Warriors is still hot on the Wii U and being re-released on the 3DS, and new Dynasty Warriors games themselves coming out pretty much left and right all the time. Dragon Quest Heroes is there. DQ fans, hold on to this game. Pick it up if you're willing to support the series, but I can't see mainstream gamers really latching on and attaching to this game. With everything being said, as much as I want to, I have to only give the game a 7 out of 10. And even then, I think I'm being a little bit generous to the game just because of my pure love for Dragon Quest. So with that, guys, that's going to wrap up this review of Dragon Quest Heroes for the PlayStation 4. I'd like to thank you for watching, and of course, I hope you enjoyed.